Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism, narcissistic relationships, and healing from these relationships. So this next question I'm going to put in front of you is not a great question, right? Because the thing that so many people in these relationships struggle with is, do you want this relationship? Okay, or a relationship. Usually it's the relationship you're in with this narcissist. Versus that choice of not being abused. And the challenge being that this relationship means being abused. How do you separate these two things apart? Let's talk a little bit about this. I'm not saying it's a meaningful choice. Most people don't have a choice here, but sometimes if we can see how these two things overlap, it can really help you think about, like, what am I fighting for in this relationship? And, oh, there is no version of this where it's not abusive. So let's take this on. So before we go any further with this sort of complicated video topic, I'm also going to take a quick second to let you know that I am having 2 in-person events this fall for survivors. One is in London, England from September 5th and 6th. The other one is in North Carolina from November 1st to 3rd. If you just go to the video description, you can see, if you just go to the video notes, you can see a description of these events. There's also an event on September 7th for therapists and coaches in London, England. Again, all of these events, all that information can be found in the video description. So let's go back to what this video is really about, all right? So the question is, do you want to be in the relationship? And how do you reconcile that with not wanting to be abused? It's a tricky question, and frankly, I think it's a trick question. And I have worked and navigated many people through this really what is impossible dance. Let's face it, nobody wants to be abused, right? I don't buy the masochism theories that float around about survivors of narcissistic relationships and that the abuse is, something that works for them. Absolutely not. But relationships are also very tricky sorts of animals, especially these. So let's start with the basic question. This is easier. What are the reasons a person would even want a relationship? Let's start with the easiest kind of relationship to reflect on, an intimate relationship or a long-term committed relationship or a marriage. Why would anyone want one of those relationships? I mean, you can certainly post in the comments what your reasons are, but I can say after years of doing this work, here are some of the ones that I have observed and compiled for people I've talked with. Some of these are cynical. Some of them are common and basic. All of them apply in different situations. But these are the reasons I've heard people want a relationship, not necessarily why people stay in a relationship, but why they want them. Okay, these are the things I've heard and been told. Love, belonging, security, family, companionship, optics, societal pressure, friendship, loneliness, financial reasons, nostalgia, convenience. I'm sure you have other reasons. Again, drop them in the comments if you want. Now let's kick this out a little further. What are reasons that people would want a relationship with their family? Belonging, love, it's just how it is. They're my family. Nostalgia, convenience, security, something to do. Financial reasons, loneliness. Now, some of these you can see overlap between why people would want an intimate relationship, why people would want a relationship with their family. Now, the massive issue raised by narcissistic relationships is that people will say, okay, I get it, blah, 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 radical acceptance, it's clear to me what's going on, it's a mess, it sucks, this is my family, etc., etc. But then it gets to go time. And whether people are making decisions about staying or going, divorce, breakup, moving out, separation, no contact, low contact, the whole range of stuff. This is where I hit a painful and poignant stubbornness in many survivors. And I completely empathize. But the stubbornness is, I don't want this relationship to end. I just want these people or this person to not be like this. So some of you are thinking, well, that is not radical acceptance, is it? If a person thinks that, they must think that that person or the people they're in the relationship with can change. I don't know if folks who want the relationship but don't want it to be abusive think it can change. They don't want to stay in something awful, but they want to stay in the relationship. It's the ultimate double bind, catch-22, call it what you will. Here's the ultimate in radical acceptance. Staying in a narcissistic relationship means abuse in a range of ways. Passive-aggressive, rage, manipulation, a million little digs, betrayal, mockery, gaslighting, future-faking tantrums, pick your poison. So the plan of staying or going has to be made from the place of, yes, I want this relationship, and yes, I know staying means ongoing abuse. But that's the cognitive dissonance, that's the tension, and that's uncomfortable as hell. I recently talked with someone about a situation like this, and this person and I were both frustrated because there were practical reasons that this person did not want a relationship to end with a narcissistic person. It's largely related to children. But they didn't want the relationship to be abusive. They knew the relationship was abusive, and there was such a frustration. I get it. It's a horrifying choice. And frankly, I don't even think it's framed to call it a choice. It simply is. Then a few weeks earlier than that, I talked with someone else in a narcissistically abusive relationship who didn't have the young children pressure, but had some extended family stuff. But it was the same thing. They wanted the relationship. They didn't want it to be abusive, but they knew that the only version of this was the abusive version. But whatever the relationship represents, it's a tough thing to let go of. The stuff that keeps people stuck, that's a little different. A lot of it overlaps with that long list of reasons people want relationships, but the stuck part is also complicated by trauma bonding, making it feel almost physiologically impossible to leave one of these relationships. But the wanting the relationship part, that's trickier, because once the relationship is this harmful, the relationship is almost more of a shell, a construct, an idea, than it is a true relationship. Because stuff like companionship and compassionate love, those are definitely not happening. Radical acceptance is easy enough to talk about, but almost impossible to do. In many cases, it's all but impossible. And it is made harder by things like the simple desire of wanting a relationship, and ideally a relationship with people you've known, maybe your whole life or for a long time, and then realizing that this relationship you're in only works in the abusive version. It's like wanting a car that's blue, but being told that particular model doesn't come in that color. But it's far more complicated because your heart and mind and soul are being broken almost every day. Again, I do not think of it as a choice, but it is a way to think about it that can foster the radical acceptance. This car doesn't come in blue. This relationship doesn't come in a non-abusive version. Radical acceptance is the driver of realistic expectations. But in the day-to-day, having to accept that it will suck a lot doesn't feel sustainable. But you would be amazed at how many people endure these relationships for a lifetime. People who finally get there, maybe because the practical reasons shift, maybe because it hits a tipping point, and in the most fortunate cases, because the narcissistic person walks away, recognize that their lives lighten up considerably when they are out of these relationships. It still may raise grief and logistical hassles to lose the relationship. And in a small subset, the unresolved trauma bond can mean that life gets more difficult after the narcissistic relationship ends, but this is not the norm. But when people have a narcissistic relationship out of their life, it creates a lightness. You know how it feels when someone takes a heavy bag off of your back? It's lighter. Your body moves better, even when it raises life hassles. There is a lightness to not being abused. It's actually a really beautiful thing to witness a person who has traditionally been treated badly having more and more moments in their life when they are not. It's like watching someone coming into bloom, coming back to life. You know this. Simply if you get a long break from the narcissistic person, they go away for a week or two, have a business trip, that you feel worlds better after just a few days. The pain of this is that the thing you want, it doesn't exist. This relationship, but I don't want to be abused. Nobody wants to be abused, but it's normal to want a relationship. Perhaps the better way to frame it is that you want a relationship, not this abusive relationship, but this is the one you've got right now. And this is much harder with a family. With a committed relationship, yes, you can go through the hellscape of a breakup or a divorce, but you can still potentially find a new love story. But with a family, there's no dating apps to find a new family. Can you imagine Hinge for new families? Right swipe, like the way that family looks, it's not happening. However, some of you I know have created chosen family. But the healthy part of you wants a relationship. But this one, if it's a narcissistic one, there really is no way to create the abuse-free version of this relationship. And that can be a bitter and jagged pill to swallow. Thanks again.